I've been a nurse for 21 years this month, actually, and an
Ooh.
LNC for a little over 8 years. Um, and my business name is Ford Consulting. So whenever you work as a legal nurse consultant, most of the time it's your own business and you develop an LLC. So Ford Consulting is that, and it's named after my first son. His name is Ford. So yeah, that's about how it all is.
I love that. And you've been in LNC for about 8 years now, is that right?
Yeah.
That's quite a bit of time. I'm running into a lot of LNCs that are just breaking into it in the last year, last couple of months. So I'm definitely seeing a rise in LNCs, but I was really excited when I figured out how long you've been doing this for. And recently you've pivoted to helping nurses become LNCs. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Talk a little bit more about that.
So I like to share on social media, but I started sharing as a new mom account, just thinking, like I learned a lot in my beginning days of being a new mom and started sharing like that. And then once I was doing legal nurse consulting full time, I started sharing bits of that. And I started getting tons of DMs, just people messaging me, hey, what is that? Where do I get started? What do I have to do? And I really wanted to develop some sort of, I don't know, guide to help them because I was literally sending an email. At first, I would just like free form it and say, here's how it goes. And then I developed an email that had links. And then I was like, I just feel like I want to give them more. More and more people just kept coming. And so it took me about a year to kind of figure out, okay, I really need to learn some more skills on how to do this and how to set it up. And I started with just a simple PDF guide. It was August of 23. I launched that. And I just kind of did that on the side of my legal nurse consulting until the end of the year last year. And then in January, I was just seeing that more nurses wanted more from me. They wanted more mentorship, they wanted more products, they just wanted more information. But I really wanted to go all in on that and give them what they wanted. And so I left my firm position and just started my mentorship program. And so that is where I'm at right now.
Wow. Wow. I just want to point out to my listeners, we talk a lot about doing market research and kind of figuring out what the market is saying to you and kind of meeting that demand with the product. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did right there. The market was really screaming to you that there were a lot of nurses looking for alternative careers and that you had a ton of experience in this alternative career and you kind of scaled up from there. So yeah, exactly what we always talk about here. Super interesting. And your mentorship seems pretty comprehensive. Actually, you were recommended to me from someone I think that took your mentorship. I think that's how I asked for you to be on this podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, you come highly recommended.
Thank you for that. I really pride in taking care of my nurses. They have lots of questions. And that was the biggest thing whenever I started. I had nobody to ask questions. It was literally trial and error. Does this work? Does that not work? How do I go about this? Googling a lot of information.
Mm,
So one of the parts of my mentorship is that you get to ask me questions whenever, via voicemail, like voice message on social media, or you can send me an email. We also have a community group that you can ask questions in. So I really wanted to bring that forth to nurses because I feel like that is how they get helped and they can be successful in this career, is being able to ask questions whenever they're getting started. There's just not a lot of information out there to Google and really figure it out. And that was kind of what the premise was behind my product, was to give you the realistic way to get started. I also, whenever I got started, I paid like $10,000 for a course because I was Googling and the same thing came to the top every single time. And then after I was doing it for 2 years, one of the nurses I was working with was like, hey, you didn't have to get that. You didn't need that certificate. And I was like, what?
mm,
And so she like really enlightened me to that. And so that was another thing that I really wanted to get that out there. A lot of people think that you have to pay thousands of dollars to get started, and it's just not necessary. You do not have to do that. So that is really where my social media point started and me really pushing this guide.
Yes, you are absolutely preaching to the choir for spending thousands. There's a pretty well-known writing course that costs thousands. And it's the first one that pops up on Google because of SEO. So everyone is driven towards it. And it's tough. So I do like keeping my rates well lower than that because I think a career shouldn't be hindered by someone's affordability to pay for a course when you don't even really need it. And a course can't teach you everything about everything anyways. So there's always going to be learning factors beyond that. So that's interesting that you picked up on that too, because some people do like to capitalize on like SEO and popping up in the search engine and charging a lot of money. And it's really tough.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. I definitely recommend everyone to do their research out there and don't just pop up on the first page of Google. Really
Yes.
explore your options and find something that is really supportive. I do the same thing actually with the people in my medical writing community. I always say, ask me questions, please ask me questions. Email our LinkedIn community, like whatever they need. And it also helps me understand where their thought process is and what resources I might be missing in my course and how I can buffer it up from there. I'm always trying to improve that thing. And the questions have really sparked new like workshops from that. So also doing your market research right there and benefiting the nurse too.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about your journey as a nurse that transitioned to an LNC? What made you want to do this role?
I think that it was more like family driven. So when I say that, I'm originally from Mississippi. I worked for about 9 months before I started travel nursing, and I travel nursed for about 8 years and then landed in Phoenix. I was actually traveling back and forth between Phoenix and San Francisco, and I was working PRN jobs in San Francisco because honestly, that's where the money is, bedside
Yep.
nursing wise.
Yep.
And it was super easy to go back and forth. And then I met my husband in Phoenix and kind of got stuck here, and he asked me to stop doing that. Um, so as we were planning to get married and have children, because I got married pretty late in the game, I was 35, so we knew we would go directly into that. I was working in a very busy pediatric interventional radiology department, and it was literally like I left here in the morning and I had no idea what time I would come home. It really
Oh.
depended on how the day went and what cases were needed.
Mhm.
And so that's when I started searching remote nursing, nursing
Yep.
from home. Like, what can you do? Because I was a pediatric nurse. There's only one pediatric hospital here in the Valley. There are other hospitals that have parts of pediatrics, but the main pediatric hospital is the only one. And it's about a 45-minute drive, an hour with traffic.
Mm.
So I knew I wanted to try to decrease that somehow. So in searching remote nursing jobs, legal nursing came up. And like I said, this one program just kept coming to the top, coming to the top. They even had a process where they came to like the larger cities, and it was like a breakfast, not a conference, but just like a meeting where they gave you information and handouts and a book on legal nurse consulting. And they had a program, and they were really trying to get you to sign up for the program. And so it took about a year to convince my husband that I really want to do this. This is it. Like, I need to do this. And so I signed up. It was $10,000. I took out a loan from Sally Mae to pay for it. And it was actually an in-person class at that time. So I went to Vegas for a week at 22 weeks pregnant and got my legal nursing certificate and just kind of dug in afterwards. But when I got home, I realized that I had all this information. I mean, in large books, but I didn't have the realistic view of how to get started. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now I have the education of what it is and what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm looking for, but how do I actually get started? And that's when I started Googling and just trying to figure other routes because I was taught to cold call attorneys, show up at their offices, send letters, and I just did not resonate with that at all. I just didn't feel like that was going to work. And then I had my son, and during the delivery, there was, I feel like nursing malpractice.
Mm-hmm.
And I had femoral nerve damage from pushing for 3.5 hours without getting a break.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I couldn't walk for 4.5 months without a walker. I didn't drive for 10 months. I
Oh,
didn't work at the bedside for 10 months. So it was like a real eye opener of, can I really do bedside nursing for the rest of my life? Like I
mhm.
thought that PRN would just be like easy as a mom, and I just work
Yeah.
2 shifts and it'd be easy. But once I went back at that 10-month mark, it was a little more difficult. And the fact of not seeing my child all day just really put the drive in me to get the legal nursing going. And once I started going, I did some subcontracting. I took some kind of random contracts. I didn't work for an attorney specifically at the beginning. Um, but then I had like an issue where a nurse that I worked for did not pay me. And so
Mm-hmm.
it kind of gave me like a bad taste in my mouth. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
should I really continue doing this? Like, can I really make this happen? And I took a break for a little bit and then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I was PRN at 2 jobs and got furloughed from both of them, like within 2 weeks of each other. And so after that furlough and having to apply for unemployment as a nurse,
I was
got
going to ask that. Yeah. Wow. We think we're indestructible, but listen to that.
I
Shoot.
know. And during a time that they needed nurses,
Yeah.
and it was basically like, we can't use you, we'll call you whenever we can use you, because I was working in a pediatric PACU, so they stopped all the elective surgeries, and
Mm.
then NICU. So essentially everybody was staying home. So no moms were really like, there wasn't an abundance of moms going into labor,
Wow.
preterm labor.
Mm-hmm.
And summer is the busy month for NICU. So that was like right before summer, and it still was not busy at all. So about, I guess it was like 3 weeks or so after I was furloughed from both jobs, my husband was furloughed. So we were both sitting here like, okay, what do we do now? And it was pretty scary. So I can remember like probably a week after he got furloughed, I just sat there and I kept applying for stuff on Indeed. Anything that said legal nurse consultant, legal nursing, remote nursing. It was like contract type work. And I ended up with 4 contracts. And my husband's like, how are you going to do that? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out so I don't have to go back to the hospital, because my commute was gone. I was eating healthier. My kids were thriving.
Mm.
The life was so different than what it was with me working 12 hours at the hospital and not being here for a full day. So I really pushed, and those 4 contracts worked out, and they were kind of staggered the way that they were. And in November of that year, a law office job that I had applied for while I was pregnant with my second actually came back and was like, hey, this job is open again. Are you interested? And I was like, yes, I will take it. And so
Wow.
I started that job at the end of 2020 and had that job until January of this year, when I started to really build the mentorship. And I really wanted to put my focus there right now. So it's just kind of like a little change there. So it's been a ride, but it's been deep. A lot of trial and error.
Yes, it has. And so I see a lot of subcontracting with LNC when you start off. Is that common? Because it's not with writers at all. But I get a lot of requests from writers to write underneath me. And it's like not something writers do. It's in my contract not to let anyone write underneath me. But
Oh,
I
wow.
yeah, yeah, because I have to be the one to write it. Like it's from like
Mhm.
my brain, because then it's like kind of plagiarism, I'm putting my name on it. So totally different fields, but I wonder if they get that idea from other fields like LNC, where from what I understand, it is more common when you start to have like a subcontract role. Do I have that right?
Yes, it is very common. Nurses can either choose to go the route of just trying to find their own attorney client, or they can subcontract for other nurses or for companies. There's companies that hire subcontractors, and sometimes it's like contract work, and sometimes it's they'll bring you on like for part-time hours. So there's several different options, and I think that sometimes is what people don't understand about legal nursing. It's not just one path, there's several different
Mhm.
paths. But the subcontracting is how I teach my nurses to get started, because there are certain places that you look for those jobs and they're very common, and it doesn't have to necessarily be in your specialty. It can be, and sometimes the attorney wants it to be, but it doesn't have to be in your specialty. And so that is a great way to learn. You have a built-in mentor from the other nurse, and you kind of get your feet wet and make sure that you like it before you jump all the way in.
And are nurses open to having a subcontract? Like, is that beneficial for them too, to have the help? Does it, I guess, take a workload off of them?
I think that it depends on how the nurse is running her business. So
Mm,
all you need is one attorney to make you really, really busy. And if you want to keep that attorney and keep the hours, going and continue to get the work, then some people will subcontract out that work so that they can get it back in a timely fashion. I
got
don't
it.
think that all people go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to get so much work that I'm going to need subcontractors. But I think some people try to build it that way too.